Now, if you recall, our task, or two of our tasks for this objective, had to do with implementing Active Directory environments, multi-domain, multi-forest Active Directory environments, and implementing them with interoperability with previous versions of Active Directory. The second task had to do with upgrading existing domains in Forest, including that environment preparation and the functional levels. Now, I told you that I'm not going to go through the actual click by click of upgrading the domain. It's actually a very boring process. But the actual upgrade process itself, the steps that you have to go through before you get to the boring part, that's actually the much more meaty content that you might need to know for the exam, and you definitely need to know if you're tasked with going through an upgrade of any Active Directory. So I want to spend just a minute here talking about the 5-step process, because these 5 steps are critically important that you do them in the proper order and that you pause in the proper locations in order for these tasks to complete appropriately. The first of which, the first task, as you can see up here, is just simply to get healthy. Now, at any point in time, before you ever begin any process of doing any upgrades, it is generally a good idea, it's really a good idea, to make sure that your Active Directory is indeed healthy first. This could be things like ensuring that you have the correct registration of Active Directory's DNS records. This can be things like ensuring that your domain controllers themselves are healthy operating domain controllers. Making sure that you have appropriate replication occurring between different domain controllers. Coming up a little later in this series, I will show you some tools that you can use to check your health of your domain controllers and the health of your replication as well. Making sure that your sites and services are configured appropriately. All the little bits that make up Active Directory need to be healthy before you take the next step here, which is to extend the schema. Now, I got to tell you, the extend the schema, if in all the different Active Directory upgrades I've done over the years, it is this process of extending the schema that I swear is the one that gets the managers the most nervous. You walk into a room full of non-technical people and you tell them that you're going to extend the schema. It automatically makes the hair on their back of the neck grow up. I don't know why. Perhaps because extending the schema sounds like this really crazy, challenging activity fraught with danger. But extending the schema is really what it is in its actuality. Is just simply adding additional columns to the Active Directory database. Maybe changing some attributes and how those attributes are manifested in the Active Directory database. I tell people you maybe just avoid using the term extend the schema and just say adding a couple columns to the AD database. It seems to fit a little bit better in those types of meetings where you have to get things approved by people who have no idea what they're talking about. Well, the extend the schema process can be done, at least in the old days, it was done with a tool called AD-Prep. AD-Prep. These days, you can use the AD-Prep tool. You can also use the tools that are built into the Active Directory wizards that are part of Server Manager. I will show you the AD-Prep way of doing things because being command line, it is probably one that you'll be tested on. There's a good chance that there will be some sort of AD-Prep questions on that exam because just command line is a great use for exam questions these days. I also want to show you, not so much, in addition for the test, but I also want to show you because when you step into that meeting to request an extension of the schema, more often than not, you're going to be asked, okay, well, what are you doing? What actually is going to happen? I want to show you exactly what does happen when the schema gets extended so that you're prepared to answer the question appropriately. And you can give whoever asks you the question a whole boatload of files to have them go verify on their own to see if the schema ends up corrupting anything that they've done in the past. In all likelihood it doesn't, but at least you can offload this requirement onto somebody else because you have the proper information to give them the necessary bits. Once you've extended the schema, it is then and only then that you go through the third step in the process to upgrade your domain controllers to your new operating system. Now, what's important to recognize is that there is going to be some period of pause that has to occur between extending the schema and upgrading the domain controller to those domain controllers to your new operating system. If you have a large distributed network with lots of delays that can occur between different domain controllers, you might give it a couple of days before you start doing any upgrading of DCs. What's also important to recognize is that this third process here will have its own kind of built-in pause that occurs after it as well. This pause occurs because, and are you ready for this, you can't actually move to the next, the fifth and the final step in this process until every single domain controller in the forest or domain that you plan on upgrading is at the new operating system. Let me say that again. You will not be able to get to the final step in the process until every single domain controller is at that new OS. Now remember when I told you back that the single forest, single domain model is the desired state for a lot of organizations? The reason for that is that in a single forest, single domain model, it minimizes the number of domain controllers that are required. I had a client there, I was aware of a client many years ago that had hundreds of domain controllers. And getting them down into a single forest, single domain model reduced them from hundreds of domain controllers to at least dozens. And that process takes a very long period of time. So think carefully about trying to create multiple domains just because of the expense, both in hardware and time, in actually getting those DCs upgraded once every couple of years. This fourth step here is entirely optional. It's optional because you may or may not need to relocate your FSMO roles. The FSMO roles may be fine on the servers that they already are on, but there may be some relocation of those roles if you plan on replacing them with new hardware and new names and things like that. So I won't talk much about the relocation of FSMO roles because you've done that back in the previous content. Not likely to be tested on here because it's not part of one of the tasks, but just know that moving around to FSMO roles is something that's probably going to happen if you end up replacing hardware or changing its names. The last step here is raising our domain and forest functional level. And depending on whether or not you're doing an upgrade for a domain or an upgrade for a forest, you may need to do one or the other or both. The functional level, raising the functional level, is the process, the last step. And it is the process that actually begins to give you all the benefits of going through the upgrade. It is not until you go through this final step, here number 5, that you actually get to enjoy the benefits of having a new Windows Server 2012 R2 infrastructure. Until you do that, you're still running under the old set of rules. So getting to that 5th step is the ultimate goal. And it's something you only get after you go through the process of getting healthy, extending the schema, and upgrading your domain controllers to your new operating system.